It's the day after Christmas, and it appears that finally the mainstream press is now taking Bernie Sanders seriously. So, this is stemming from two articles that came out today, one from Politico, one from the New York Times. Let me just first show you the headlines, and then I'll read a bit about each, and then I'll also give you my takeaway on what all of this means. So, first, the Politico headline here. Democratic insiders. Bernie could win the nomination. His resiliency in the primary has caught the attention of the party establishment. This from the New York Times. Why Bernie Sanders is tough to beat. His supporters are loyal, and in Iowa, they don't really have eyes for anyone else. All right, so before I even read any of what's written here, it's about time. Now, you could kind of say this isn't really a good thing if you're a Sanders supporter. It's kind of better to stay on the down low and have people not really or I should say have the corporate press not really pay too much attention to you. But with that said, they have paid attention to Bernie Sanders, just not positive coverage. So all the coverage so far has been highly negative for the most part. And here is really the first indication, these articles here are really the first indication that that the press is actually seeing the ability that the Sanders campaign has to win this nomination. So first, let me get to a bit of what Politico says in their piece. Democratic insiders said they are rethinking Sanders' bid for a few reasons. First, Warren has recently fallen in national and early state surveys. Second, Sanders has withstood the ups and downs of the primary, including a heart attack. At the same time, other candidates with once high expectations, such as Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, or Beto O'Rourke, have dropped out or languished in single digits in the polls. Quote, I believe people should take him very seriously. He has a very good shot of winning Iowa, a very good shot of winning New Hampshire, and other than Joe Biden, the best shot of winning Nevada, said Dan Pfeiffer, who served as an advisor to former President Barack Obama. Quote, he could build a real head of steam heading into South Carolina and Super Tuesday. So I'm going to give a little more of my thoughts after I read both the pieces here. But there are common themes you'll see throughout, like bringing up the fact that Sanders had a heart attack. Like, this comes up in both pieces, and it really is like, it's funny that they just thought, oh, because he had a heart attack in October, they thought that was going to somehow end his campaign. Because, look, I guess in most cases for other candidates, it would end their campaign. But in the case of Bernie Sanders, not only has he appeared a lot healthier since having those two stents put in, but also his support has increased. He's had huge endorsements from people like AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib. And as you see in polling all across the board in every state, he has largely increased his support base. So with Bernie Sanders, the reason why the heart attack didn't really affect him the way it affected other candidates is because he has a strong support base of people that want to see him as president. This isn't just like, a vanity project for him. Bernie Sanders is running because he doesn't see anybody else in the race that can take on this message the same way that he can and actually deliver for people. And on top of that, he's the one that has built this movement, built the largest grassroots movement out of anybody in the race by far. By far the most individual donors, by far the most individual donations, by far the most volunteers, by far the most grassroots support in general. And he also has the ability to reach out to a lot of non-voters, which is a quality that the other candidates don't really have. But before I go any farther here, let me read from the New York Times piece. A recent poll from the Des Moines Register showed that among likely Democratic caucus goers who said Mr. Sanders was their top choice, 57% said their minds were made up, according to the Register. No other candidate registered above 30%. Those figures alone could portend a strong showing for Mr. Sanders at the caucuses, where candidates must receive at least 15% support at a caucus site to collect that site's share of state delegates. Quote, Bernie Sanders is definitely being underestimated in Iowa, said John Grennan, the Democratic chairman in Pasquina County, Iowa. Because his backers are so loyal, opponents have been unable to penetrate his base, if they have tried to at all. Part of the reason is that Mr. Sanders' strategy revolves around engaging people who typically don't participate in the political process, a highly difficult group to target. Even the Sanders campaign acknowledges it is a risky strategy. Another factor is sheer resignation. His rivals just don't see the point in trying to pick off supporters who probably won't budge. So here, as I was saying before I read this piece, Sanders has the ability to engage typical non-voters. This is how you win. This is how Hillary Clinton lost in 2016. She, first of all, didn't bring out the Democratic base enough, but apart from that, she also didn't bring out enough independents, enough non-voters to be able to defeat Trump in those swing states where she lost the election. So Bernie Sanders won a lot of those states that Hillary Clinton lost to Trump in 2016. He won those states in the primary. He has the ability and is on pace to win those again, in addition to winning a lot more states to win the actual nomination this time. And he's able to do that by bringing out typical non-voters. This is a key to any victory, be it in for the Democratic nomination or against Trump. But other common themes here. So as I said, the heart attack is a common theme through both these articles. The fact that he has a dedicated support base, and look, this and his polling numbers, and the reason I'm laughing at all this is because this has been obvious the whole time. It's amazing. The pundits just completely ignored Sanders the entire time. All of a sudden now, after Christmas, actually Bernie Sanders, now that I actually look at the numbers for once, he does have a good chance at winning. All of this was obvious before. People like me, people like, Kyle Kulinski, Mike Figueredo, TYT, we've all been discussing this the entire time. We all understand this whole time because we look at the numbers and we can see Bernie's support is strong. We can see he has a great shot at the nomination because we look at the data, we look at the facts. Mainstream press, just completely oblivious, or not even really just oblivious, but they have a certain agenda to push certain candidates that are not going to challenge the existing system. Bernie Sanders challenges the existing power structures, the corporate structures, the existing system, the Democratic establishment, the media establishment, the corporate establishment. Because Bernie challenges all of that, the mainstream press, which is, the corporate media, because they're controlled by big money, essentially, by massive corporations, they are not going to prop up a candidate or even cover a candidate objectively that challenges their hold on power, because any positive coverage or any objective coverage they give Bernie Sanders, that can just lead to him getting more support and give him even a better chance at winning the nomination. But I guess now they're kind of like, this is the warning shot, basically, telling other people in the industry, in insider circles, hey, actually Sanders has a really good shot at winning, and maybe we should now pay attention and potentially think of a strategy to defeat him, potentially. But look, neither of these pieces go into that part of it. So if the Democratic establishment or the media establishment or the corporate establishment are going to try and find ways to defeat Sanders in the primary, these articles don't touch on that. But look, they're going to try and find ways to do it, as they have through media, but it's going to be really tough, which is why I'm actually I think Sanders has a great chance here. I'm very optimistic at his chances at winning the nomination because he has this solid support base. People that support him largely are Sanders strong voters, so they're going to stay with him. They're not going to swing to somebody else, at the last minute in a voting booth or at a caucus. So they are with him. No other candidate has a base like that. And if they're able to engage non-voters as they are trying to, when every other candidate is essentially ignoring those voters, if they can bring out non-voters in the primaries, that's it. I mean, I could even potentially see a scenario where Sanders wins practically every state because he has that base. He has people that are energized that will come out and support him in these primaries. So this is kind of, these articles here, in addition to people like David Axelrod on CNN discussing how actually Sanders, he's been largely ignored, but he has a great chance. I think it's Steve Kornacki on MSNBC also mentioned how Bernie Sanders has the highest positive numbers in terms of all the candidates. So Democratic voters and voters in general love Bernie Sanders more than any other candidate in the race. They're recognizing now that Bernie Sanders has a really solid shot at this nomination. And for once, I think the media is correct.